Well, we're in January at the minute. It's probably one of the least busy months of the whole beekeeping year. Pre-Christmas, we've been packing orders, we've been treating bees. Now it's that couple of months, January, February, before we start to get really busy. It's all about planning, it's all about putting equipment together, and it's all about getting excited as well. In winter, there's very little beekeeping to be done outside, so we always use the time productively, and we're going to be making supers today. Supers are the boxes that we collect honey in. You see this large pile of wood here? We've got to make that pile into something that looks not dissimilar to this. So these are supers, these are the boxes that we collect honey in. It's the most important bit about what we do as beekeepers. It's why we're doing it, to collect honey. So these boxes are really important. So this is a finished super. This is what we hope will look like. The real important parts of it. We're going to put spacers in, but this tolerance here is really, really important. With the type of hives that we use, which are the British National Hive, they are what's called a bottom bee space hive. So the frames actually sit flush with the top of the hive, but the frames don't go all the way down. There is space below these frames for the bees to move around between boxes. If you start to give bees more space than they need, they'll propolyse them, they'll put wax there, they'll put honey there, they'll do all the things that you really don't want them to do. And that's the thing about a beehive, it's designed in such a way that it makes it easier for us to harvest honey and take the products away.
Let's get making.
Yeah. I thought you said, you know what, I actually think, you thought you said, let's get naked then. And I was like, hey, this is not the sort of channel.
It's not that kind of YouTube.
It's not that kind of channel. British National comes in 8 pieces, effectively. So we have side pieces with grooves in, side pieces without grooves in. Then we have top bars and bottom bars, and it's worth just putting those in groups so when you pick them up, you're picking the right part up. We can put one of these and one of these aside for now. What I'm actually going to do with these is I'm going to build them upside down. So these bars here are the same as these bars here, with a little bit of, so that's where I get my tolerances from. So I put one in there, and then the 2 side pieces, and just after I've done a little bit of an inspection, you see we've got some knots on this side, knots on that side. To me, that looks the better side to be on the outside. They go together reasonably well, but sometimes they're really tight, like that. Do the same with this side. It's probably this side that looks the best. And they're sitting on these bars here, so that's going to give me my tolerance, and we're now nice and square. We don't drill near these holes, but we want to drill reasonably close to them and just give them a start. These will be out in all weathers, but mainly in the summer. So we take most of the supers off, get stored away in the winter. But even so, if you do them right at this point in time, they will last you 20, 30, 40 years in. So these long screws, this is the top. We want to keep it the same way around. We just flip it round, and we're now going to add on our second piece. If there's any knots near the top, I like to put those sort of towards the bottom. So this is the bottom, so we'll put that there. So in the British National we have 4 parts still to go. We have sections which have an angle on them, and that's so that rain will run off this, but this is for the bottom of these bottom bars on here. But the top parts have a rebate in, and it's this rebate that the frames are actually going to sit on. So we are going to glue this bit. The reason I don't glue the other bits is, to be quite honest, it gets everywhere and it doesn't really add anything to the strength. So we're just going to run a bead of glue along the end here and into that gap along here, and this is waterproof glue as well. So we take our part. This is the one with the angle on it, so that's for the bottom. Just offer it up and then very gently going down a little bit on either side and let that sit there. And then we want one of these pieces with the rebate on. Now the rebate, as I said, the frames are going to sit on this, but this is part of that rebate, so it goes with the rebate facing outwards like that. So this rebate now is, the frames will sit on here, and there is a small groove behind it which the bees can access underneath the frames. But as you can see, they fit nice and flush with the top end there. That's that side done, and then again this is the top side. We just literally flip it over and then do the same again. So there's our super. The main things are it's square, it's solid, it's not going to part company with the rest of it and leave gaps for other insects to get into. With the supers, I run 10 frames in, so that's 10 of these. If you imagine these are frames, we have 10 of these frames. The advantages to that, for me personally, are that when the bees will draw them out, we're using less frames. These will take 12 frames, but we're only having to use and commit resources for 10 frames. But the bees build the combs that are in there, they build them out fatter. So when you come to extract, rather than the wax cappings being below the woodwork, they become nice and proud, nice and easy to extract. There's lots of different ways of spacing your frames. You can use self-spacing frames, where the wood of the frame is actually the thing that spaces it. Or I like to use these castellated spacers. Again, this is the top, so what we're going to do is we're going to put these spacers into here. As long as they don't protrude over the box, that's fine. So all I'm doing is eyeballing this corner so it doesn't go higher than the corner. When we're extracting at the end of the season, the more uniformity we have with each frame of honey, we can set the uncapping machine at one distance and it will do everything. Also with the bees, if there is unequal spacing and that spacing is more than, I think it's 8 millimeters, what's referred to as bee space, they will build the comb where they want to do. So if the frames are too far apart, we want them to build comb in this plane, they'll build it in this plane, so they'll basically stick everything together. So it's really important that we don't give them that opportunity where they've got bigger spaces and they'll actually put what's called brace comb across the thing. That just makes my life a lot harder in August when we're extracting. When the season kicks off properly, which is towards the end of March, early April, there really isn't time to do this work. If I don't do it now, then when it actually comes to putting boxes on hives, you just don't have the time and the bees they'll just get away from you. So here's our finished box. Just do a quick test. See, it's flush on these sides, flush on this side. It's nice and square, and we didn't have to measure a single thing. We're almost there. There is one final thing to do today. Obviously, these boxes, in totality, particularly when you get them full of honey, there is a cost to them. So we brand our boxes. It makes them distinguishable should they get stolen. We haven't had that problem so far, touch wood, but we should always plan for that, I think. Like a teal. As well as being a bee farm, we're a working farm, so we've got some sheep, and the alternative is me running around waving my hands around, or get a dog, which is what I did. Meg is the mum, and she's been here 4 years now. Really good temperament. So these are hopefully the next generation. Might keep one or two, or one, probably. They're all really healthy and they look good, and they're certainly putting on weight with all the food they're having. I think I always thought about not having puppies in winter because it would be, I don't know, you always think summer would be more kinder to them, but I think winter's a good time. You know, they do spend a lot of time inside. They were born in the kitchen. They spent a couple of weeks in a crate. As soon as they start to move, then they have to come in somewhere, and they got the run of this place, and it's put the mum in with them. It's good. We just wanted to give her the opportunity really to have one litter of puppies in her life. She's 4 years old. It seemed like the right sort of time, and she was great. Did it all herself. Bought all this crap off Amazon, you know, whelping kits, and we used one pair of rubber gloves out of the whole thing. So we'll maybe put it back on Amazon or eBay or something to get rid of it. So this was the very first one that was born, and she's quite a shy girl, but she'll make a good dog, good working dog. But no names just yet. We'll see who we keep before we give them names. I like that one, and I like that one. But this one's just got a little white dot. That's how we tell, a little white dot on the back of its head. But it was this was the firstborn. Right, on to the next job. We do have a few bee tasks. We've finished the treatment of our bees, and there are a few pests that we need to control. But the main jobs are just making sure that they have enough food to last them out what is their winter. For lots of different reasons, spring can come a little bit later. So we go around and we check the weights of the hives, and we supplement them with fondant, wedding cake fondant, something that's low in moisture but is high in energy for the bees. But generally, the feeding we've done at the back end of last year in October should see them all the way through to when they're running out of stores, but also the new nectar and pollen is coming in. At the moment, in the home apiary that we have here, there are 12 hives, and each of those hives will be approximately about 5,000 bees. They'll be huddled together, they'll be creating heat. But the main thing for the bees is they will have already sensed that we've passed the shortest day. So for them, it's all about planning for the summer. So the queen will start to lay, the bees will start to feed those larvae, and it's the work that we've done at the back end of last year to make sure they are healthy bees is how they will come out of winter. Well, the time of year is where we check on the food stores of our nucleus colonies. These are basically like our lambs, so we're going to bring them on. They may give a little bit of honey this coming season, but they really come into the productive time next year. They're all headed up by queens that we've bred ourselves. We're just going to check on the food stores because as we move towards the end of the winter, that's when potentially they could run out of stores. They've got no fondant on at the minute, but they've got a nice bit of waste. That's probably still 10 kilograms. They're going to be not in the best mood today, I think it's fair to say. Inside this hive now, they'll be rearing new bees. They'll be about 36 degrees C, and we've just exposed them to the cold of a Welsh winter. So that there's a nice number of bees in here. Just checking under the lid to make sure the queen isn't up here. There's quite a few bees up in the feeder. We'll just put that to one side. You can see the nucleus colony, they've got lots of stores in these outer frames. But they're a nice little colony. They go through, a regular hive will go through the winter probably with about 5,000 to 10,000 bees, but that'll expand really quickly once the forage comes out in April, and they'll move towards more like 50,000 to 60,000 bees in the summer. So the clusters, it moves around inside the hive as the winter goes on. They're really the only aim of this cluster is to create that 36-degree heat so the queen can function. She can lay, she'll now be laying bees to move off into the spring. But it's about, you know, coconut sized, I suppose, grapefruit sized. And they just use the honey to vibrate, create heat, and that should get them through the winter. It's looking really good. You've got some nice weight on it. You don't want bees, personally, you don't want bees to go through winter too big because they just use stores up. So the bees that we're looking to breed are ones that go through winter really frugally. They can handle going through with not many bees and not many stores. What you have got to be careful of is how soon spring comes. So like 2004, it was a very late spring. Let's see if we can see the queen on there. You can see it. So they're busily working their way around the stores, and this is the capped honey that they've still got to go. And working on both sides there. So they've used all the stores up here. I'm just looking for eggs to see if the queen's laying on this one. She isn't laying on this one. So they are actually pretty well behaved, considering we've just taken the lid off the house. Again, they've got plenty of stores. They always use the honey at the bottom first, because honey's a great insulator. So this honey around the top will keep them warm as well. But they also, how they know this, I'm sure somebody's done some research, but they always know that heat rises, so they can always access this honey. If this honey was at the bottom when we get a cold spell, that's going to be colder still going at the bottom. So they always use the honey from the bottom, and gradually as the winter goes, they'll move up. I've got a few little eggs in there, hard to see on camera in this light, but we have got the queen laying, and the nest, as you see, is towards the front of the hive. It's another reason as well, if you imagine that's the hive, this is their entrance. Honey that's placed at the back of the hive is easier to defend. So they'll work from this corner, sort of generally up this way, higher up and towards the back. 1, 2, 3. Now there's about, I'd say 5,000 bees here, roughly. A nice cluster, a really optimal sized cluster for this part of the UK. As you can see, as we move farther out, they've got more honey in there. So this, like all the colonies, we want to try and keep an eye on. They've used the honey on these last two frames. But every couple of weeks now I'll come back and I'll just feel the weight, and the ones that are going light I'll put fondant on. Any bees that are on the outside will gradually make their way back. But they were nice, you know, exactly how we want them. Nice chilled out colony, particularly on a day. The sun's come out, but it's still only, 10 degrees, and we don't want to keep them out too long. So we've got about 60 nukes like that go into winter. Not all will make it to the other side, as it were. Probably about 10% losses. So the important thing at this time of year is just make sure they've got enough food, nothing else to do. And the queens take a laying break in December, January, but we could see eggs in that hive, so she's back into lay. And she's now rearing those bees that will take her into spring. keeping an eye on them this time of year is essential, really. They never ever, unless you've done something really wrong, they never ever die from starvation in November. It's always in February and March, and sometimes into April. It all depends how soon spring comes. And so they're eating through those winter stores. That hive that we looked at had plenty of stores. But we just need to keep an eye on them now, because as the bee populations start to increase, more food's used, and they can use it up really quickly within a couple of weeks. So that's part of the regime we do at this time of year. Got 60 nukes, and every couple of weeks I'll go around, check the weights of them, just make sure everything's as it should be. Yeah, I think this year is definitely going to be the culmination of quite a lot of things, culmination of a lot of plans. We're going to step up a lot more. This YouTube channel is obviously part of that, introducing not just the company, but bees and beekeeping, but all the area that we live in, and why it produces the type of honey that it does. We're very keen to do that. From a sustainability point of view, we're very keen to raise the next generations of bees, not relying on imports. We supply our local communities, local shops, local delis, so food miles for this quality product are really quite low. The business of the Snowdonia Honey Company has been running only for about a couple of years. We have produced honey here before. We sold from the farm gate, but you get to a point where we have more demand than we have supply, and then it flips around, more supply than we have demand. So we have to create new avenues, which we've been doing over the last couple of years. From the business side, year one is put, obviously you're investing at that point. Year two, it can start to stand on its own 2 feet, but isn't really a business. It's more of a hobby. That was the feedback I got from my accountant. Are you sure this is a business? But then year three, we've bought the equipment, we've set ourselves up. It's now a self-funding business, and the excess becomes a salary. The basic plan for this year is to make the farm sustainable in terms of the bees that we have, but also sustainable in terms of finances. It needs to support itself. It needs to create a living. It needs to create jobs mainly for people, and that's where we want to take it this year. I think we're around about 120 hives, and the plan is to get to maybe even around the 200, 250 hives. We'll have to see. That may involve other staff, it may involve seasonal staff. Don't know at this point in time, but it's going to be a real good journey to find out.